indeed, all roads do lead to Poland, at least for this show. And we come to you from Warsaw. Beautiful downtown Warsaw, actually, don't we? Close enough.
Close to.
We can see the skyscrapers from down the road, can't we?
It's not exactly downtown.
If you were a giraffe, you could see them easily.
Easily, yeah. We're just off a little to the north of
just a little
downtown.
Little north. I welcome Ivo Binder. It's good to see you.
Likewise.
Old friend.
Likewise.
What a pleasure. We were lucky to have you when you appear, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And also Tony Gonzalez, or Tony McFarlane Gonzalez, or Tony McFarlane Gonzalez. There he is. You're not in trouble. I'm going to call you Tony, not Anthony. Because I know you feel like you're in trouble if I call you Anthony. Which is a beautiful name. Beautiful name. It's lovely. Mad Anthony Wayne, the Revolutionary War general, for whom Fort Wayne, Indiana, is named. I like to throw out a fun fact at the beginning of the show. And that's the only fun fact we're going to have, because it's going to be grisly today.
Yes.
We've got a grisly series. We're going to talk about Poles at Jamestown. That's not so grisly.
Not grisly.
But that's a topic that Ivo is one of Ivo's favorites, and something I just happened to know about by accident of birth. Main problems facing Poland right now and Europe. The British Prime Minister crisis, we'll do a little bit. I was on another channel talking about that the other night when Liz Truss resigned. In Liz, we do not trust. Another one bites the dust, to quote Mr. Mercury, although I think that was an old saying. And then we're going to talk about this new Prime Minister who's that's a bag of wampum there, isn't it?
We shall see.
He's got a lot of wampum. He does.
Yes.
He's like the richest guy in the world. He's like richer than Trump because he actually has the money. Yeah. He doesn't just make it up because he goes, well, this is how much I think I'm worth today. I think I'm worth about $20 million today, okay?
Yeah, there is actually a legal term when you're putting together a financial deal, which is called goodwill, which you can then actually put a price on. So you have plenty of goodwill.
Who does?
You.
Oh, thanks. I hope so. We do our best. I mean me and all my personalities, like Herschel Walker, the future senator, perhaps, from Georgia. It's a close race. Might not win, but maybe will. And he wrote a book in which he had 12 personalities or more. I mean, he saw that movie, The Three Faces of Eve, and he said, I can do a lot better than that.
I can best that. Yeah.
When it comes to schizophrenia, I'm a multi-minia. Yeah. Anyway, then we talk about Kherson, our favorite subject, which we have been watching. Tony, haven't we? Been watching Kherson. Closely. When did we start? 3 months ago, didn't we? Watching it closely and talking about it?
Yeah, especially with the involvement of it from the Ukrainian forces.
And it's now what we were talking about is happening right before our eyes, isn't it?
Yep.
Gosh, I'm so proud of us for getting something right. Well, for me,
we've been getting a lot of things right on this development conflict.
Yeah, we got some right. Well, we have some. We study up, don't we? And we know.
Indeed.
We have a couple of sources, but beyond what's some of the press has been very good on this. The reporters out in the field, including our own, who was Mihal, who's appearing on the show sometimes. He was supposed to be here. Mihal couldn't be here. He's a really bright guy, and very brave. He's huge. He's about John Wayne's size. Now, I'm not a short man.
I would say that if you're a war correspondent, that's actually
not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
I told him to keep his head down, and I meant it literally. Yeah, I meant crouch. Give Richard III a run for his money. Crouch back. Okay, that's a Shakespeare joke. Yeah, I like to make those. People get those references, and they love me for them. I'll get hate mail, no doubt, and that's fine. I already do anyway. I had one person write in and go, now this was the other show, on the other appearance, but on this show, wrote in and goes, just question, ... question mark. Now, there's an intelligent comment.
Very deep, or rather broad.
That's intelligent.
Yeah, broad.
That's the kind of comment that really, you just go...
Widens the conversation.
Yeah, you just don't know. But on the other show that I was on, talking about Liz Truss resigning, so there were a lot of comments on a different channel, and one of the comments was, Richardson thinks he's very clever, but he doesn't offer any solutions. It's like I'm the MP or something. No, we were supposed to be commenting on why she resigned, not offering solutions for the British government. I mean, honestly, it's asking a bit much of me, isn't it?
Well,
none of them can solve their problem.
You hardly ever have one person who's both a theatre critic and a playwright. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It hardly ever happens, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
For a reason.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, I like that. That's good, and it is true, isn't it? Yeah. Or a movie critic and a movie writer. It happens sometimes, like Bogdanovich, who started as a critic and a writer, and then switched over to being a great director most of the time. Some great movies. Anyway, but I suppose before we get to polls at Jamestown, did you read that article about the young Russian guy on TV, Tony? Did you see it?
I started skimming it, and I haven't read it completely.
Well, that's okay. Ivo, you want to?
Well, when
Do you
was
remember?
this? That was Sunday. Last Sunday, we had actually a fairly prominent employee of RT, the Russian official state channel, who was conversing with a guest on his show. And the guests mentioned that even during the Soviet times, little kids were telling him that Ukraine is occupied by the Muscovites. And to which the host responded that Ukrainian children should be drowned in a river. He also said that, especially in Carpathian areas of Ukraine, because that's where this guest was, they have very ugly houses, and that the children should also be burnt inside those houses.
Carpathian being on the border with
in the south,
European Union. Yeah. The hardest place for the Russians to get to. A lot of things are going on in that area that the Russians don't like because they can't get there.
Yeah, but anyway, that's what he said on Russian state TV.
Is he fired? Or
well, apparently he was suspended or fired a day later when the video actually went viral, and it's hard to defend this even in Russia. So we'll see what happens. My guess, he will get a slap on the wrist and probably a nice cushy job somewhere where he does not have to appear on screen.
Well, maybe. Go ahead, Tony.
I was just going to say he got fired. I just looked up more information. He's no longer working for that. So Ivo is right. He might get a cushier job somewhere else and not appearing on television.
Right. So they'll move him. It's the Peter principle, isn't it? He's incompetent to speak on TV, so they give him a better position behind the. But there are a lot of people who are agreeing with that, of course, silently, because Russians are known for, unfortunately, read Tolstoy, don't blame me, or Mr. Solzhenitsyn. I call him Mr. because I didn't know him personally. Did you?
Alexander? No.
That's why I call him Mr. Solzhenitsyn.
But you Americans are more direct with this whole first name basis thing.
Well, if I talk.
But you're from the South, so you still use Mr. and Sir.
We try to be polite. I try to be polite, but it's not easy. It's a real fight, and if I were to meet him, I'd call him Chuck. How you doing?
He would probably respond in kind.
What's up? Rhyming with Chuck?
For instance.
Never mind. Never mind. Old Chuck Solzhenitsyn. I love that book about the Gulag. That was really funny. That was a funny book.
Unfortunately,
how'd you make all that up?
Towards the end of his life, unfortunately, he veered a bit to the Putin-esque side, but that's
we became more of a.
That's a sad story.
Dominatrix.
But what he had written, I mean, in sorry, no.
Dominator.
But he what he has done in Gulag Archipelago is something that has secured him a place in history forever.
It's an amazing book.
He diagnosed
Yeah.
this evil communist totalitarian Soviet system. So.
And nobody did it better. Arthur Koestler had a good run, but nobody did it better than Solzhenitsyn. And that puts him up there with Tolstoy, with War and Peace, in terms of the Russian
That
big
and
writers.
his beard.
They both had a beard. That's true. Do you think he was aping? I don't mean that literally. I mean that he was acting like a gorilla, but or a chimpanzee. I mean aping in the sense of copying Tolstoy.
Well, I think there is this whole tradition of Russians who, generally in the East, have beards. In fact, Tsar Peter, known also as Peter the Great, ordered his boyars to shave off their beards to sort of get rid of this symbol of backwardness. But interestingly, Jesuits who were training to work in the East in the 17th century Poland actually were told to grow beards because you cannot have a priest without a beard. So you're expected at a certain level to have a beard.
Wonder why that would be.
I have no idea.
Tony?
Nope, I have no idea.
You have no idea? I go to Tony for all these. You don't have any intelligence on that, Tony?
Oh gosh, history intelligence.
The Russian beard?
No.
Nothing on the Russian beard from Tony. Thank you, Tony.
I can't
Back to
grow
you,
a beard
Ivo.
myself.
Well, Dugin
We'll be right
has-
back to you, Tony.
Dugin has a similar patriarchal beard, and the
Yeah.
beard, there's a bunch of archetypes that are connected with that. Wisdom, old prophets.
Well, it's very
et cetera,
Edwardian
et cetera.
as well.
As well, so it really goes back a long
And
way.
Civil War.
And gives you,
The generals
of
had
course,
beards, and not only.
And in fact, if I remember correctly,
But not in the Revolution.
It was
American Revolution.
British officers in the second half of the 19th century. I think they were actually officially ordered to have facial hair because that made them fierce looking.
Great Scott. Gives a whole new meaning to the film Zulu.
Good film.
Actually, not everybody is. Most people are shaved in that. But there are
Because
a
that
few
was the
beards.
first half of the 19th century, my friend.
Was it?
Of course.
No, it was like 1875, wasn't it?
No, I mean, when was the Battle of Isandlwana?
It's the 1870s.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to consult.
Yeah. I
Google on
believe.
that.
I
Yeah,
believe.
well,
I'll turn to Tony. When was that battle, Tony?
Iwasuna?
Yeah.
That was 1860, because it was right after the American Civil War, so it was 1867, 1868.
Yeah, it's right after, yeah. Or 72, let's say.
Sorry.
Ivo's looking it up, and while he's looking it up, I'll start to talk about Jamestown. I love this when the panel gets excited. There's a bit of a... We don't resort
19th
to...
century battle.
Yeah, we don't resort to obscene teasing. We simply look up the fact. Although obscene teasing is also fun in its place.
It's highly recommended.
Yes.
The Battle of Isandlwana, 1879. Yes, you were right.
Richardson lucky. He's not as clever as he thinks he is. That's for sure. He doesn't have any solutions. Okay. I don't have any solutions. Okay. That's
Of course,
fine.
if we trust Google.
I trust Google.
Well,
I'm
to a
not.
certain point.
Well, I know because I watched the film, and it says in the film, I mean, I know both of those films really well. The one with Peter O'Toole about the first battle, and then the next day is, or later in the day is Rorke's Drift.
Yes.
Which is Zulu with Michael Caine's first film. I know both of those films. And the history of the Boer War, I mean, I studied it, this history is what I like, And I studied it at university, and I just kind of I'm like an addict, really. It's crazy. I just eat history. But you do as well, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
We have that in common.
I'm actually a trained but non-practicing historian.
Yeah, I'm a trained historian as well. Yeah, and I can jump through a hoop while reading about Abraham Lincoln, which is not easy to do, is it, Tony?
No, it's not. That's actually a tough subject to take.
I just wanted to make sure you didn't fall asleep while we were praising ourselves about our intellectual deficiencies. Okay. Inadequacies, differentiation from the ordinary citizen. Okay. Polls at Jamestown. Okay, you and I have been talking about polls at Jamestown. There is a film on Netflix about it.
No way.
Yes.
Dude.
Yes, we were going to make a film about it. because I grew up 6 miles, 7 miles from Jamestown, just off the Jamestown Road. Used to ride my bike down there all the time. Ride around, beautiful area, and one of the nicest areas in the country. And there's a fortress there, and the old glass works recreated. You can buy the blown glass, and the Poles introduced that. But not only house building, many other things. John Smith.
You could argue
Tell
that
us.
they actually saved the colony, okay? Because
Yep.
when they arrived about 6 months after the first wave,
1607.
they saw that people were sick, and they said, well, probably you're sick because you're drinking water straight from the river. So why don't we just dig a well for you guys? Which they proceeded to do. The well still is there. In fact, recently they did some excavation in the well, and they found a halberd. And a halberd is a very big pole arm, no pun intended.
Yeah, it's like with
an
this axe
head,
on the top, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
imagine in what state.
It's like a lance.
It's like a.
It's a lance and an axe
well,
together.
It's a big pole arm, but,
Yeah.
but imagine what you had to do to actually drop it down the well. I mean, why? I would suspect some moonshine might have been involved. But anyway, so the Poles built the well.
They got drunk and threw a spear in the well.
They built the well. They started a glass blowing workshop. They also were tar makers. And interestingly, they also started the first ever strike on American soil.
They had the first strike.
Soil, and it was, in fact, a political strike.
Yeah.
Because they went on strike to protest the fact that they were not given the right to vote by the English colonists, who decided that only English people should have the right to vote. And
That's
the Poles
correct.
went, come on.
Wait a second. We built all the houses.
Right?
We're doing all the
Dude,
glass. We
yeah.
built your well. We're doing all the work to save your life, and you're not going to let us vote? Crazy.
So,
But there was a bit of snobbery in some of these early people.
Oh.
They were lazy. They were third and fourth sons of families who weren't inheriting anything, and they became adventurers. But they didn't know how to do anything.
they were not really
Yeah.
used to doing...
Or soldiers. All they could do is fight.
Well, actually, John Smith himself, speaking of snobbery, of course, he was a very brave man. He had a great idea. He had a very adventurous life of a soldier fighting in the Mediterranean against the Turks. Then he was captured, and interestingly, he, as he was escaping Crimea of all places, he went through Poland, and that's where he got the idea. And we have surviving letters of his, which saying, when we do this colony thing, we should also contract Germans and Poles because they're good craftsmen, and we can treat them as half slaves.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they had indentured people anyway.
Well, yeah.
And there were some of those were British, and that practice continued through the Revolution.
That's very true. But boy, was he taught a lesson by those Polish glassblowers, some of whom were actually of noble blood, so to speak.
So the point is, I want to go to Tony now, because Tony was recently in Ukraine, and if you could talk about what you were, some of your observations, Tony, it'd be great. I'll give you a spotlight in just a second. Just to say, if you want to watch this, there's a film on Netflix, but it's a subject that you and I love. The film's not that good, but it's okay.
Do you remember the title?
Yeah, put Jamestown, or
Okay.
Look at Jamestown or something.
All right.
Just put in Jamestown and Netflix. Tony, you recently were in the Ukraine. How long for, and what was going on?
About a week, so in less than 5 days. Humanitarian aid to the front lines, just to Kharkiv, and then we were also picking up a lot of the equipment to bring over to Kiev. They're really pushing and supplying their people down in Kherson. There is a complete and total media blackout that is that has been in place, and that is for a strategic reason. Even though our intelligence community has been saying that they are not gaining much ground as much as the Russians are losing, and they're not really telling us the amount of ground and personnel that they're losing there at all either, or the forward movement, because there is a stalemate right now at the bridge, or trying to cross that little bay area that's right across the bridge in Kherson to gain the entire town. There is an envelopment going on, so they're trying to move their forces from the western side of Kherson to the eastern side of Kherson to
Who
try
is
and envelop
the
and push them
Russians?
down. No, Ukrainians.
The Ukrainians are, yeah, because the Russians moved out. Anyway, continue. The Russians did move out their officers and their medical staff.
To get on that, I was going to get on that. So
okay,
they have
please do. Please, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
yeah.
you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
What they have left are completely untrained personnel. The rough number right now that is estimated is 2,300. Basically, what the heck are those called? Conscripts that are ill-trained to basically caught in fire and cover the officers and the medical staff as they're fleeing Kherson. Now, there are speculations as to why they're fleeing. Of course, we don't know what it is yet. The reasoning could be that they really can't hold that line, or that they're preparing for something worse. We don't know.
What is something worse?
Tactical nuke.
Or some kind of dirty bomb, or some kind of WMD, where you leave the buildings intact but you poison everyone.
Yeah, and that's what they're fearing, and that's one of the things that has been weighing on the minds of all the ODCs and the embassies.
The ODCs? ODCs?
Operational Detachment Commands.
Good for the people, yeah. Yeah, and?
And all the intelligence community personnel there and across the Baltic intelligence. So that's what we've been really worried about, is what kind of weapon of destruction, if they are planning, what are they doing and where are they located? Because they don't have control of the southern part of Kherson yet. And that's the one that has access to the bays. And we're trying to figure out what their escape routes and how they're going to be going back. If they're going to be going back to Crimea and taking ships from there. That might explain the reason why they had transportation ships come from the Baltic all the way to the Crimea from Kaliningrad.
This is all very, very good stuff. Some of this not in the press. I haven't heard this at all, because you and I haven't spoken about these matters in the last few days since you were away. What did you find the mood to be in the places where you were? On the Ukrainian side, that's all we can say.
Yeah, discerning, because getting really frustrated with the fact that the Russians are continuing to attack and the Western countries are not acknowledging the fact that they are Russian attacks. However, there is a light that they're seeing, and it's kind of unusual if you think about it. And let me go down this rant for a minute before
we got about 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll make it quick.
Yep.
The Israelis are going to get involved because it's Iran. Iran is training the Russian soldiers to actually deploy these drones. So they will most likely, within the next few months, I would actually say the next couple months, send military assets. I don't know if it's going to be only military equipment, to Ukraine to help fight the war against the Russians and Iranians. So Iran has just kind of stepped on their foot, to say the third foot, and really, really made a country that they should not really make mad at all. And that's interesting because Israel has 1.2 million Russians, and they also have a lot of Israelis in Russia. And that's going to create a very interesting tension between those two countries. And that's going to be very interesting to see that develop in the next couple of months. Right. But the general mood in Ukraine is discerning. They don't like that. They want to get back to normal. A lot of the stuff has gone back to normal. They repair things really quick, but the mood is just, there's severe uncertainty. They don't know what the strike in the next mood is. So it's a lot of fear, I would say.
Do we know about the losses? You know what? Let's come back after the break. We got to go watch a couple of messages. Let's come back and take it up and finish this subject and move on to some of the other political crises, and which are full of humor and jest. You know, especially the British situation. Okay, everybody, enjoy these messages. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you after the break. Everybody, and welcome back for more absolutely fascinating. Notice I put the in there just to seem human and like a regular guy. I didn't have to use that, but I use it occasionally So people don't think I'm so clever and have solutions.
Oh,
Because I don't.
that must have hurt.
Hurt a lot.
I'm sorry.
I'm
with you.
I'll be seeing my thoracic surgeon today to remove the ulcer.
You know, if you want to talk about it, find someone else.
You notice how I throw in thoracic surgeon?
When one would expect a therapist. I noticed that.
Yeah, because I want to go
appreciate
straight to the source of the heartburn and the heartache. Anyway, we're talking about Kherson, which is really a serious thing. And, let's face it, we've laughed about nuclear war on this program, but we're not going to laugh about the possibility of Kherson disappearing and what that would mean in terms of a wider war. And this is something I'm worried about. I know Tony was saying they're worried about it. I think it's worth touching on that again. Tony, would you care to expand anything you didn't tell us, people you've talked to about that?
Yeah, what we're really worried about is the actual dirty bomb. And everybody talks about a dirty bomb, but what is the expression of a dirty bomb? A dirty bomb can be the size of a briefcase and still destroy the city entirely. Let's just use, for instance, a city that people know the most. We'll either use here Warsaw, or we'll use Boston, or we'll use New York. So if we put it downtown Manhattan, it would literally destroy downtown Manhattan for the greatest part of over 150 kilometers in a circumference. That's a dirty bomb. It doesn't have to be a big tactical nuclear interballistic missile that has 4 to 7 warheads in it. It could just be about the size of a roller or the size of a coffee can from Mr. Coffee, or the size of a laptop, literally. That type of nuclear.
So you're talking about all of, at 150 kilometers, you're talking about all of New York City up to area of West Point and over to Long Island and well into New Jersey, even to Princeton, probably.
Yep, and that's
a big area.
There's a very big area, and that's not the issue. That's not the only issue. The other issue is the nuclear fallout.
Yes, of course. This is the thing that people discount. That depending on where the winds are blowing, but if they drop it on Warsaw or somewhere in Poland or Rzeszów, where all the troops are concentrated, or say the Romanian border where there are a lot of troops, then you risk less of it blowback onto Russia. You drop it on Kherson, you're right there on the Russian areas and the Russian border, more or less, if the wind blows that way, right?
Yes.
So
But the thing that we have, Will, that's a bigger concern is that if that dirty bomb, if you're talking about dropping it over here in Poland, is that a lot of the border crossings are not really protecting the people. They're just checking to see their paperwork, and then they're just going through. And I can attest to that. And that is the biggest concern that I have. That's one of the meetings that we will have with the intelligence community coming up on Thursday or Friday to discuss and meet to see what other things we can push through to other ODCs to make sure that they action that, because it's lackadaisical in how they handled it, or in how I've seen handle other vehicles. So that dirty bomb could easily be traveling through Poland to other destinations. So it's people, when I tell them that the borders...
But once it's into Poland, you won't know.
Exactly. Then it's in the EU and they can go anywhere because we don't have closed borders. And I mean, that's a good thing. I'm not against closed. I'm not for closed borders. Hell no. But when we're dealing with a country that's not in the EU and bringing that in here, it's like a needle in a haystack to try and ever find again. I mean, yeah, you can find it by the radioactive isotopes because you can easily trace those, but it's hard because it's like a dog sniffing a trail and it takes them forever to find it.
You know, this has been a threat that's been talked about since the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. It used to be everybody was afraid of various terrorist groups doing this. The Chechens were somebody that people worried about with radium or some kind of form of radioactive material in a briefcase. That alone can cause a lot of contamination, even exploded with varying amounts of TNT. So you don't actually need a huge bomb
No.
to really an atomic bomb to create nuclear radiation at a substantial, I should say, substantial amount of damage. Yeah, is that fair?
Well, yeah, that's fair. And interestingly, that you mentioned, you mentioned that we were worried about various terrorist groups doing that.
Well, for a long time. You know,
And now we're talking about an actual state actor doing that.
Right.
Right. Of course, I hope we're only
But
speculating.
the origin of this material
No,
was
no.
always Russia. It was always going to be Russia or Ukraine at that time.
Certainly.
Yeah, but Ukraine got rid of their weapons, right?
Yes, for for security
For
guarantees.
security
for
guarantees.
Russia.
And now Russia says, forget that part. We said you're not supposed to, NATO's not supposed to do anything. That wasn't part of the agreement. The agreement was you provide a joint security with Europe and the United States for Ukraine if they give up, and your interest and Europe's interest of stability, their nuclear weapons. That was the agreement.
And if Ukrainian people want to get
Tony wants
out
to
of your
jump in.
sphere of influence,
Yeah.
I think you should look at why they are trying to get out of your sphere of influence.
Exactly. That notion's a fait accompli, it's obvious. And Tony, you wanted to jump in there, didn't you?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the reason the Ukrainians took that also, you have to take into account where they took away not threw away, but they dismantled their weapons, is because they were also wanting to show the world they were capable of joining the UN and not be a country that had nuclear capabilities, and that they could be at peace that way. That was actually one of the biggest historical events I would say, in the 90s or in modern history, because an actual power from Russia that broke off showed the example that they are willing to do to take away and do the right actions, on top of where Russia and the United States are still not doing that. Even China, India, and all those other lesser countries are not wanting to follow in their suit. But that's a double-edged sword. Sorry, Eagle. But
that's a good comment, but obviously, a lot of the weapons, nuclear weapons of the United States and Russia were got rid of. I mean, it was in the 30,000, wasn't it, from both countries, and now they're down under 10,000, more or less, around.
Yeah.
But the tactical nukes that the U.S. got rid of, the Russians did not. As I understand.
exactly.
Is that true or not true?
They never got rid of them.
Yeah. Okay.
They just put them in dormancy. It's kind of like how the United States dismantles their nuclear weapons. The warheads they will never destroy the warheads, because they have a what's that called? A decaying time.
A half-life of. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, half-life. Yeah. So they have a half-life that they have to follow through before they can actually be completely destroyed without any issues.
I just want to say, I'm not clever and I have no solutions.
No, neither do I. But I mean, that's what they're storing them in nuclear storage facilities in Black Mountain in Nevada.
Yeah.
So that's where they're at.
Wow. This is something we're going to be watching carefully, all of us, and feeling it in our bones, because it's a scary time. Let's move to the British Prime Minister crisis, because we got a new Prime Minister. We had a Prime Minister, then we had a new Prime Minister. Now we have a double new Prime Minister, who's also the richest, Rishi Sunak. I hope he's not wishy-washy. That was the other option. And look, he's rich. I'm going to make fun of him. He's one of the richest people in the world, and in the UK, which means, when you get around $1 billion, it's pretty good.
He's a little below.
Yeah, it's close.
Yeah.
If the pound goes up again, where it was, to 130, it'll be there.
Then he'll be there.
This is like 750 million pounds.
Yes.
Pounds.
Pounds.
Great. Scott, I thought it was his weight for a second. I was like,
That's a little less.
That guy needs a diet. The man was hungry. Cut down on the fast food. But it was a misprint. It's actually Trump's weight, 750 million pounds, from all the Big Macs. A Big Mac a day.
Keeps the doctor away.
It keeps the doctors constantly surveilling your cholesterol. At any rate, talk about the sick man of Europe.
McDonald's hatred. I just
Talk about the sick man of Europe. If Trump moved here, that'd be him. Okay.
The Golden Arches, they provide you with reliable and consistent meals, especially when you're on the road.
I like a plain hamburger.
There you go.
Plain hamburger is my icon. McDonald's plain hamburger.
Yeah.
Hard to beat.
Are you talking about the burglar, the hamburglar?
I call them hamburgers. Yeah. Another place I like is the Burger Whopper. Yeah, that's a good place. Burger Whopper. Have you ever
Never
been there?
been there. Mm-mm.
No, Burger Whopper's good. I think I might start my own franchise. So I remember the days when Britain was called the sick man of Europe. I don't remember those days.
That was Turkey.
But it was no, that was World War I. Yeah, the Ottoman Empire,
Yeah.
World War I. But they were called the sick man of whatever. And Britain was known as the sick man of Europe during the 60s or 70s. It was the 70s, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, yes.
Yeah. And this is when they had, succession of prime ministers flipping back and forth between Heath and, well, they had Heath and Wilson, and then Heath carried on, and then they had the other guy,
And then it was Thatcher.
Callan. Callan.
And then Thatcher came,
Yeah,
and
not Callan, but something similar. Then
Things
Thatcher
changed.
came in '79.
and
Yeah.
things changed.
And stayed there for the whole of the '80s. So, and they had problems with growth, just like now. 73% of the British population, according to a statistic I just made up, no, it's from Statuscom. I always go to them for all my. This month, in October, as of October 22nd, 73% of the British say inflation is the number one problem. National identity, gosh, who doesn't have trouble with that one now? Are they British? Are they European? Are they British or are they multicultural? How multicultural are they? Well, we're seeing now vary. And how to capitalize on Brexit, because there were Labour Party people. I spoke to one, Lord Glassman, who's a Labour Party theoretician, who was pro-Brexit. It's not just Conservatives, Labour too, and wanting to reignite entrepreneurialism and free trade within the UK. But they haven't taken that because the fighting. Parties are all fighting with each other. That's another point. Then you have the constitutional problem. Don't these problems sound familiar?
Yeah, it expands to the United States and Poland.
Yes.
Especially Poland.
Okay, all the points I'm outlining, and I didn't even throw in COVID and the war in Ukraine, but all of these points were outlined by Martin Wolf, who is one of the top economists, writers about the economy in Britain and for the Financial Times specifically, not only. He's been there forever. Those were all points he made 3 years ago, and gosh, he was right. And there's a vacuum in leadership, in the sense that we are not convinced by our leaders more than ever. And look at the Conservatives. They take the Conservative Party. They've been in for a long time. How long have they been in for? 10 years now?
Almost.
Yeah. And the Labour Party was in for 12 years or more, 96 to
Well, because
whatever.
Yeah, they had Tony Blair, who was not an idiot.
Who was not an idiot?
Blair.
Yeah, Blair was no fool. Yeah.
You can disagree with what he did, but, he was very clever.
Yeah, he was very clever. And at any rate, so we're looking at these problems everywhere. All of the problems, even constitutional issues, all of those are problems, with the exception of Brexit, but certainly foreign trade is a problem everywhere. And how, exports versus imports and tariffs versus no tariffs or low tariffs, high tariffs versus low tariffs. These are all problems in all the countries we're talking about and throughout Europe, exacerbated by COVID, by the printing of money, quantitative easing, what a phrase, it's a joke, which Mr. Rishi Sunak, thanks, oversaw as the Chancellor of the Exchequer. The printing of money, this just crazy printing of money with no thought of tomorrow, just about winning elections.
Well,
not so much in Poland as in Britain and America, but still some of it. Yeah.
Well, it was about a hysteria and the hysteria, arguably created by the media at the beginning of the epidemic, which, if you just calmly look at the viciousness of the virus, was comparable but lower than the famous Hong Kong flu of 1960s, and no one was, printing money by the billion every second, and no one was locking down the world at that time. Right?
Well, no, because you have to pay the price later. You're going
So something happened in the minds of people that made this thing possible. That governments all over the world were just insane in printing money without any any sort of reflection on what it will very soon cause, because we know what happens when there is, it's economics 101, that you will have inflation if you print that much money.
Yeah. Since the 18th century, we've known this.
Since Copernicus.
Yeah. Oh, actually, who talked about coinage. That's
yes, indeed.
Correct. In, where's the place? In, what is the town? Grudjans?
No, he was in Torun.
No, that was definitely Torun.
He went to a meeting where
and
because I talked about it on the travel show. That's how I know about it. I forgot. I must have read it, but about Copernicus at some point and travels. But there was a meeting, and there's a building. They say have a plaque there.
That's where he
and that reminded
proclaimed
me.
Grisham's law,
which is
that bad money pushes out good money, because people hold on to good money, and bad money is then
bad money is devaluated currency. Yeah, and we've seen that. That's why. Okay, we don't have time to go into all of that, and probably a little bit beyond our grade. Now. Is this, if you look at this prime minister, and we'll come and talk about Poland in a minute, and some things that are going on here, but is this guy going to last? That's the question. I mean, we can only guess, but is it worth guessing? What do you think, Tony, about this situation? And how does, maybe I'll ask you how you think the war in Ukraine has compounded all of these previous problems that I mentioned, and from Mr. Wolf, and then talking about COVID. How about the war? How has that increased the problems?
It will increase the pressure in the UK? Yeah, definitely, because we're just coming out of COVID, 2 spurts of it. We've already strained the supply chains. We've pushed everything to its limits because we weren't prepared for such a pandemic. No one was. And there's still, there's going to be conspiracy theorists that are going to argue with me, c'est la vie, bring it on. But then it also put a strain on the economy because we were so used to an economy where we were dependent on Asia to supply us with the supplies here in Europe. And most of our companies have been pushed over to Asia because of low labor costs. They had to shut down the facilities. Western society had to figure out, what am I going to do now? We've taken all of our industrial and pushed it to the east. We have no support here. Our money is at value because it's dependent on another society on the far end of the world that has control of it because of cheap labor, and they're just laughing to the bank. And then the war kicks off. Oh, shoot. One of the biggest grain belts in Europe, if not the world, is now under attack by another country, who shall not be named. Of course, we all know who it is. And now they have control of the ports that send out the grains. And that's also putting a strain on countries that are extremely dependent on it in Africa. Believe it or not, some countries in South America are heavily dependent on that. And then also European countries are dependent on this grain too. And we're coming into the harvest season, we're already past the harvest season, but now we're into the winter collection season to actually make sure that we have grains to survive the year. But people don't understand that is going to be putting a huge strain, not only the grains, but the power supply. That's another thing that's there. They're also worried about the same thing too. Where the heck are we going to get the power? Where's the LPG going to be coming from? There's a lot of our homes are powered by gas. And they also start to realize that that's not going to cut it if Europe also has an issue with how they're going to heat and how they're going to have people fed. And it's a compounding factor. And he is coming into an extremely bad economy. And that's one of the reasons that everybody was under a microscope. Hence why Boris was put in there. I mean, I'm not for Boris at all. And I'm not for the way that they were trying to tax their individuals there. Hence why Liz only lasted 6 weeks, the shortest term in recorded history for the British. But I hope he actually does a much better job.
But do you see the irony that they were going to reduce taxes on the richest people in the economy at a time when a lot of people are struggling? Not a lot. I mean, the majority are struggling in Britain, according to a survey I just read today, with paying the rent, the mortgage, or feeding themselves. Where in the United States, and that holds true in Poland too, but Poles are used to hardship, harder ship than this, as are the Ukrainians. Ivo wants to jump in there and say something better than me, I think.
I would not dare, even if I knew how to do it.
I am clever, but I have no solution.
I think one of the problems is that the Conservative Party is very deeply divided, and in just lack of leadership. And whatever we say about Johnson, he was a capable leader until things piled up and he was forced out.
Could anybody? Is anybody going to be able to do this?
Well, that's a huge problem, and I think we do not have
put too much strain on the one person.
A person who would be acceptable to all the factions of the Conservative Party, because it is very splintered.
You know what they did in Rome? They had consuls. They just put 2 or 3 guys. The other thing, so you have a tripartite or a double. They used to have coalition governments. For example, the 1922 committee, which is responsible for the backbench committee, which is responsible for putting forward these candidates when there's a leadership crisis, gets its name from dissolving the liberal conservative coalition, liberals led by Lloyd George following World War I, and the great epidemic, which was far worse than this COVID.
Of course, the Spanish flu was just unbelievably vicious.
Hey.
I can say
easy on the Spanish part.
I like this.
That's cultural appropriation, my friend.
So each time I cough, I actually appropriate Spanish culture. That doesn't work this way, William. No, it doesn't. No. Plus, I am entitled to say that because my great-grandmother died of the Spanish flu.
Well, my answer to that is arriba. Andale.
That's
Speedy Gonzalez.
That's an interesting one.
Speedy Gonzalez. Speedy Gonzalez. More cultural appropriation. Shouldn't be saying that. Your namesake, in fact. Partly. Here, there's McFarlane.
No, I'm screwed. I have British and I have Spanish. And
man. I don't know. I think that's a good combination. That's
pretty sure.
It's not the first time I've run across it. In my own family, there's a combination like that. So, we don't know what's going to happen with that. And we've got to end now. We just came to the end of our time. But I'll ask you one question. Midterms coming up. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to have a whole program about that probably next week. And maybe a wrap-up after it. But Republicans or Democrats winning Senate, House of Representatives, Ivo, quickly?
Definitely, for sure, certainly the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
And unless they really screw up things royally, the Senate probably as well.
Just. Okay. And what do you say, Mr. McFarlane Gonzalez?
Democrats are going to take and sweep again. They've done it before in the past, and the American people really don't understand and are really not into the events of the world because they're stuck in the little caves. But they're extremely divided, but the Democrats are going to take it because people really don't understand what the events are going on around the world.
So you think the Democrats are going to take both the Senate and the House?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. That's all we have. Everybody take care. You're looking well. I forgot to say that. stay that way.